If you're in the market for a beginner reptile, but you don't want the staples, leopard geckos or ball pythons, corn snakes, you want something a little bit more unique. Well, let's go over the top 5 beginner reptiles that you didn't know were beginner reptiles. My name's Adam, this is Erwin, you're watching Wiccan's Wicked Reptiles, stick around. Last week I promised that I'd show you the new reptile I've had for a couple months now. This is Big Lou, the California king snake, and this is going to be number 5 on our list. California king snakes are freaking awesome. I can't say enough good things about them. There is one drawback, but we'll get to that in a bit. Now, the great thing about California king snakes is their size. These guys are impressive. They're not super big, they're not too big, and they're definitely not small or puny or unimpressive. Although they are skinny, right? So they might get to the same size as, I think it's number 2 on our list, which we'll get to in a little bit, but they're going to be a little bit thinner than most constricting type snakes, although colubrids sometimes are known for being kind of thin. Now, if you're from California or around that area, you've probably seen California king snakes, maybe even in your backyard. I know there's somebody on the Discord channel, check the link below if you want to chat about reptiles, who showed me pictures last week. He lives in Northern California, finds these things all over the place. In captivity, you're gonna find them, well, everywhere. Basically everywhere. Because they're so easy to keep. Their heat requirements, their temperature requirements, we're talking low to mid 80s. This isn't a care guide, but we'll do it if you want. Drop that in the comment section below. So pretty darn easy. I mean, just using a under tank heater or a light from above even, because they are diurnal snakes, whatever it is that you want to do, it's not super difficult, like say a Savannah monitor, Euromastix, or something that needs an incredibly hot basking spot. California king snakes are not like that. Another reason that California king snakes are so darn awesome is they eat for you all the time. Now, we talk about ball pythons on this channel a lot, and the big drawback with them, and the reason why people don't like that I talk about them so much in a beginner type of snake aspect, is they don't eat. Sometimes. They'll just go off food for months on end. But with a California king snake, this isn't going to be a problem. These guys will eat for you pretty much always, almost all the time. In fact, that's what Big Lou is doing right now, which is why he's not in my hands. I decided to put a bunch of mice into a bucket when I did this video, forgetting that he could smell everything, and, well, he was more interested in eating than being held, but this is Big Lou. I'm so happy I finally got one of these guys. He quarantined for a couple of months. He looks great, he's a male, and he's about 4 feet long, which is how big they get, by the way. 4 feet is pretty much maxed out for a California king, maybe a little bit bigger, 3 to 4 feet, and that's great, because then they need something like a 30 or a 40 gallon. Some people say 20. I had him in a 20 for quarantine, it was too small. So he's in a 30 gallon right now, or the equivalent in this PVC. Alright, let's move on. Number 4, Dumeril's boas. Adam, I had no idea you were going to talk about Dumeril's boas in another video. Said literally no one who ever subscribed to this channel. This is Cubone, the Dumeril's boa. And I've got another one now, which we called Marley for the first couple episodes, but her name is now Marowak because, well, it works. This is one of my favorite snakes. She is very small right now, and I know what you're thinking. Okay, well, this snake is going to get to 6 feet, maybe 7 feet. How on earth is that a beginner animal? Well, they start off smaller than this. This is a 3-foot animal, and it takes them a long time to get up to size. So same thing with a boa constrictor. I think a boa constrictor could be a good first-time pet if you get it as a small individual, you're dedicated to keeping it healthy, and you know what you're doing. But at the end of the day, you're not getting a beast right off the bat. You don't blink your eyes, right? A snake this size is going to take 4 or 5 years to get to adult size. So if you get a Dumeril's boa, and a lot of people who watch the channel are, 15, 14 years old, something like that. If you get a Dumeril's boa that's this size when you're 15, you're going to be 20 years old by the time it's full grown, and your parents want to kick you out of the house because, you have a big snake that eats rabbits and big rats and stuff. So it's kind of perfect in my opinion because they're kind of slow and docile. Don't get me wrong, if you got food, they'll strike at it real quick. But in general, they're pretty chill. This is a ground boa, so they don't need a ton of space. They do get kind of heavy-bodied, like you'll see Marowak here, but nothing super crazy, nothing super intimidating about this in my opinion. And if one of the reasons you don't want a ball python is because they're pet rocks, or that's what people who are too macho to say that they actually like ball pythons say on reptile forums, these guys are not pet rocks. Not in the least. They move around, they do sit there in their enclosure a lot, but turn the lights out and try to handle them, and they're definitely not pet rocks at all. This animal here especially is very much fun to handle. She's a ton of fun. She tries to get on that camera. She's trying to like get around my leg. She's not trying to find the high point, like the highest point like some boas will. Another reason people don't want things like ball pythons and corn snakes is they don't think that they are impressive. This animal, no matter how you slice it, is an impressive animal. Now, not maybe at this size, but the patterning alone, right? So we talked about the California king snake earlier who had an impressive pattern. This snake has an amazing pattern, and sometimes the peaches and purples will just get absolutely unreal. They'll get crazy. And also, when they get bigger, sometimes those colors dull out a bit, but now they're, you know, a 6-foot snake. And when I keep saying that, between 4 and 6 is average for these guys. And this is a female, and so is Marowak. So Marowak's pretty much topped out. She might get a little bit longer, but the girth is pretty much where she's going to be. And just the beauty of this snake is unbelievable. I am so glad that I finally got one of these guys. If you're thinking about a Dumeril's boa, even if you're a beginner, get something that's small. It'll take a long time to grow. By the time it grows up to full size, you are no longer a beginner. Now this next animal, number 3, is the only one I don't have in my collection yet. Number 3, painted Agamas. I love painted Agamas. They're so cool. I found a breeder in Canada, so I'm going to be able to get them without even having to worry about CITES paperwork. I don't know if they're CITES or not, without having to get them across the border, which can be a pain. So I'm really excited about that. Going into next year, I should be able to get myself a pair. Okay, why are they so cool? Imagine a bearded dragon that isn't a bearded dragon, right? Because this whole list is kind of turning into don't get this, get that, right? If you wanted a corn snake, California king snake maybe is a little bit cooler of an option. If you want a ball python or maybe even a boa or something in between, get yourself a Dumeril's boa. If you're thinking about bearded dragons but want something more unique, painted Agamas, or some people call them clown Agamas. And these guys are fantastic. I'm going to keep this one a little bit shorter because I don't actually have first-hand experience owning them, but they look amazing. They look and act very much like bearded dragons. They're very tameable. Everybody I know who has them has pictures of them on Instagram, just chilling out on their shoulders, things like that. They're not super expensive. I actually found some that are about 150 bucks Canadian, so what's that, like 3 cents American, whatever the exchange is these days. So not super expensive. Although they are farm raised a lot of the time, so I'm just kind of lucky I've got a breeder that's only 6 or 8 hours away that can ship here, that captive raises them and captive hatches them. And a couple other things that are cooler than the bearded dragon as well. The diet is still, it's pretty easy as well, but also they're smaller. So if you need a little bit smaller of a space, then you can't say have a 120 gallon, which is what I personally recommend for bearded dragons. I know, I'm gonna get, no, my 75 is fine, I'm not being cheap. Well, consider getting a bigger enclosure. For painted Agamas, a 75 is plenty of space. People call them mansions, 75 gallons for them. I don't know. I think they're awesome. You just probably didn't know they existed, because I didn't for a while either. Painted Agamas. What the heck is this cute little thing? This is the world's smallest python, Antaresia. In fact, this is a spotted python. Antaresias, you've probably heard of things like children's pythons. Children's pythons are in the same family as spotted pythons. Spotted pythons are a little bit bigger than children's pythons, but not by much. They're still going to only get to about 4 feet, something like that. So you're not going to have to worry about a big animal. But if you want something that's a little bit smaller, right? Say you want something that's about the size of a ball python, maybe it's time to think about a spotted python. And the really cool thing with these guys too is they move rather slow. So photographing them is cool, and people are going to want to know what the heck it is. If you have one of these on Instagram, people are going to follow you. These guys look very different, very unique. This guy's growing pretty good. I've got 3 of these actually, but this is the one that's growing the best. And normally they eat really, really well. Most of them eat really, really well. The guy I got them from sold them like that. Except for this one, which he was going to hold back and was nice enough to give to me, and just 2 that didn't eat for whatever reason. But they all get eating eventually, which is something that people gripe about with ball pythons, which we talked about. Antaresia, you're not going to have to worry about that too much. And I can already hear you in the comments section, you Australians. Antaresia, mate, I'm not even going to pretend to do your accent. Antaresia are the easiest and the best reptiles you could possibly keep, and everyone has their first reptiles. Yeah, I know, in Australia, you can only have native reptiles. And spotted pythons, children's pythons, anthill pythons, Stinson's pythons, which are the Antaresia genus, are likely your first pet snake, right? Antaresia and carpet pythons are super common there. But you don't see children's pythons or spotted pythons here in North America or in Europe very often. So although they start off pretty small, even smaller than this when I got them a couple of months ago, you can check out a whole video about them right here actually, they do get to about 4 feet. So not huge, which means you can keep them in a smaller enclosure. Some people keep them in small as 40-gallon enclosures. I think 20 is a little bit too small. Again, there's a care guide I just pointed to. These are, I don't know, I can't really describe how cool they are just because even their little tiny faces and their eyes, they don't look like anything else. A lot of the other things on the list, they look like something else. These guys don't. Something I like about some species of snake and some genus of snake is if they are arboreal, it's a big plus to me. Simply because if it's an arboreal snake, it just looks a little bit more unique and it acts a little bit more unique as well. Because if they're an arboreal snake, then they're going to be up in the trees or up in the branches or up on sticks or whatever you give them to climb around. And this guy is no different. Semi-arboreal, but still, because they get so small, you don't need a huge enclosure. If you have something that's 2 feet tall, that's going to be more than enough space for an animal that's half its body length if it gets up to full size. And spotted pythons are known for being placid. I could have easily put them on last week's video you can watch here about animals that don't bite. Now I'm saying that, and hopefully that continues here. There is a big thing of rats out there thawing. But in general, these guys are pretty darn placid, as much, some would say, as a ball python. So again, if you're one of those guys, ball pythons are cool, but, they're pet rocks and I don't want them and I'm too macho to have one. Well, get a spotted python. 4-foot snakes are pretty macho, bro. And last but not least, number 1 coolest, most unique beginner pet reptile that you didn't know was a beginner pet reptile, African fat-tailed geckos. Now hold on, I know some of you saying, bro, you're phoning it in. Everybody knows that African fat-tailed geckos are beginners. No, not everybody knows that. I learned that the hard way because when I compared these guys to leopard geckos, people told me that they shouldn't be in the same category, that humidity is too expensive, to run is too difficult for beginners. Alright, here's the deal. These guys, their care is almost identical to leopard geckos, which no one would bat an eye if I told you a leopard gecko is a beginner reptile. It is, in my opinion, king of beginner reptiles. The thing is, these guys, the African fat-tailed gecko, which come from Africa rather than the Middle East, they need a little bit higher humidity. How much higher? 20%. Like 60% is pretty good for these guys, where leopard geckos are 40. So if you can figure out how to make a box moist with sphagnum moss and coconut coir, which I don't need to do a whole video about this. Don't write that in the comments. You literally take a sandwich container that looks like this, put sphagnum moss and coconut coir, and mist it every couple days, or even once a week if you have enough stuff in there. And that's it. That's how you do it. That's the only difference. African fat tails are freaking awesome. They're cute. We've all seen this picture of the African fat tail coming out. Looks like it's a sweater shedding its skin. They're very much like leopard geckos. I really can't think of like a ton of differences. The foot structure is a little bit different. Their head structure is a little bit different. Their eyes are a little bit different. But besides that, they're very similar. I mean, the pattern, of course. And I'm not trying to say these are the same animal. All right, you get it. If you're still here, I don't need to rant to you. The reason that these guys are awesome, they don't need a big enclosure, right? Which is a big sticking point to a lot of people getting their first reptile. So if you've got a 20-gallon, boom, they can live there their whole life. Some people even say 10s. I prefer 20s, or a 28-quart tub like you see there. You don't really need a lot to keep them happy, right? I got a whole care guide about them right here. Just a little bit of places to hide, a little bit of places. Some places to hide, moist hide, dry hide, water, food. Wham bam, Bob's your uncle. Seems to be that's it, right? Super darn simple. Just a lot of people don't know about them, and it's not like they're super expensive and rare. People just don't breed them as much as leopard geckos. And they do come in a bunch of morphs, so I think they're going to catch on. In terms of leopard gecko versus African fat tail, I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up. Like, what do you like to look at? They act very similar. African fat tail is maybe a little bit more timid, but I barely handle her. Maybe once a week, twice a week. That's it. She eats for me really good. Never had problems. The poop looks the same as a leopard gecko. What else do you want me to say? They're freaking awesome. So there you go. Top 5 awesome, unique beginner reptiles that you didn't know were beginner reptiles. Or whatever we called this video. And I know you're thinking, well, how do I house these things? You didn't really talk about that. Well, if you hit the link in the below, it'll bring you to the website for cages, PVC caging. These guys are amazing. They sent me this cage here that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and we're going to do a full review on. I've never held something so sturdy. I've never had my hands on something that went together so easily. It's so sturdy. It works well. The value for money here is unlike anything else. These guys are absolutely great. Customer service is fantastic. If you want a great PVC enclosure that's customizable and you don't want to wait 6 months for shipping, Cages is the place to go. Link in the description. And of course, the most special thank you. I am so grateful to our Patreon supporters. I put in another rodent order last week. You guys are basically taking care of it at this point. If you want to see extra content, photos, some animals that people didn't really... Lou was on Patreon like 2 months ago. If you want to see stuff like that for as little as $1 a month, hit the link in the description or up here and become a patron. We really appreciate you. And for everybody who watches these videos, I sit in a reptile room, sweating a little bit, like it's kind of hot, but no complaining. I sit here, I talk to a camera, touch reptiles, which I do anyway, and you guys watch and comment and interact. This is incredible. So I just want to say a special thank you. I really do appreciate you guys watching. Did I plug everything? Hit subscribe. See you on Monday.